At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Patrycja, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, I'm really excited. So where are you from? Where are you at this point in time?
So I'm Polish. I'm originally from Warsaw, but I've been living in London, UK for the past 10 years. So yeah, I'm
Okay,
here in London now.
great. And I'm in Thailand, so there is a time difference, but not as bad as in the US.
Yeah.
That's great. So what I like to do, rather than doing a formal, introduction, is I'd love for you to introduce yourself. I'd love for you to talk about who you are and your journey and what brought you to this point in your youthful age of doing what you're doing.
Sure, yes. So my name is Patrycja. I'm Polish. I am a life and personal development coach. It means that I work with young women and I help them build a strong sense of self-esteem and a loving relationship with themselves. So during our sessions, we focus on getting clear on their goals and identifying and overcoming their limiting beliefs and transforming their self-image. So I believe that how you see yourself is the foundation for everything, your confidence, your decisions, and the life that you create for yourself.
Okay, so and I'm going to interrupt you there. We're going to get into that. I want you to tell the audience your journey. What brought you to this point of you're doing what you want to do?
Sure. So, 10 years ago, I moved from Poland to London to study fashion marketing at London College of Fashion, which is like one of the best fashion schools in the world. And that was my big dream. That was my big goal to, work in the fashion industry. I was very much into arts and into fashion. And I thought that was my dream. I thought that, working in that industry would make me happy. So I graduated after a few years of studying and, I started working in the industry doing PR and marketing. And the reality was very different to how I imagined it in my mind. I found myself changing jobs very quickly because I couldn't find the one that was right for me. However, I do think that it's good to try different things when you're young and to see what you like, what you don't like. And that can really help you to discover what you actually want to do with your life. So, at that point, I felt very lost because, the reality was just different to what I thought. And at that point, I've also become very much interested in human psychology and mindset work. So, I started listening to personal development YouTubers and podcasts, and I started reading books on that topic, and I started being very, very interested in that. And then COVID happened, and I lost my last job in the fashion industry. And COVID was probably that time for me when I started asking myself, okay, what do I want to do with my life? What would make me happy? Because clearly at that point, I didn't really find what I wanted to do yet. And I also did therapy and I had the best therapist. I was very, very lucky. And, during my therapy, we were talking about something completely different. We're talking more about my personal relationship thing. And she, during one of our sessions, she asked me if I ever thought about psychology or something connected to psychology. And that was weird because I never shared that with her. And she told me that, I think you should be really good at it. You should really think about going towards that direction. And that's something, I've been thinking about for a very long time back then, but I was so scared of that change, because that's something completely different to what I knew and what I was doing before. So she was that person who like really pushed me towards that direction to like really like go for it. And yeah, and then I just decided to enroll in life coaching certification. So first I did a little bit of research, right? I did research of like different options, so like psychology, and then I came across life coaching, which is more about personal development and getting better. And this is what I'm very much interested in. And so I enrolled in life coaching course. And yeah, like a year and a half later, I was certified, and I started working with clients and building my social media presence and my website, and here I am.
And here you are. All right. Well, what's interesting, I have a daughter that kind of went through the same thing as you did. She got her master's degree in sociology, and she was actually on a fast track with the university to go for her PhD. And I remember she called me one night and said, "Dad, I've been doing this now for, what was it? 7 years or 6 years. And I'm not sure now that I see what the PhDs are doing, they're teaching, they're doing research, and they don't seem to have a life. I'm not sure I want to do that." And ultimately, she decided to just finish with her master's degree. And then she went out and found a job that had nothing to do with her studies per se, with her degree. And yet, because she was in more of a research type of situation and had become very good at research, she ended up getting a job that with her research capabilities that really helped her. So she had the same thing happen. She found that what she thought she wanted to be ultimately was not what was going to make her happy.
Yeah, and I feel like it happens a lot with young people. I feel like a lot of people end up doing something completely different to what they studied in the past or what they thought that they will be happy doing, right? And I think, there's this, we are taught, by the society that we have to live in a certain way, right? So technically, we have to choose our path before going to college, right? So we are like teenagers. And then, we choose what we want to study. We go to the university, we graduate, we find a job, we stay there for years, climb the ladder, find our partner, get married, have kids, and that's it, right? And we end up doing the same thing our whole life. And, I feel like a lot of young people don't want to live that way anymore because they want something more. They want that fulfillment, and they want to feel like, they have that impact and they're doing something more with their lives. And I think that's great, but I think it's hard to start because we are not taught how to.
Well, and I think the biggest challenge that I see, and give me your thoughts on this, is, there's something inside that tells them they're not happy. They may not even know why. They may not know why, but for some reason, they're just not living the life they want to live. And yet to make a change is extremely fearful. And oftentimes fear is greater than the ability and the courage to make the change. And obviously, in your case, you were able to overcome that and move in the direction that you're moving. How do you help those individuals? And I know that you work mainly with young women. How do you help them, number one, to recognize why they're not happy or satisfied? And number two, help them to gain the courage to be stronger than the fear of change?
Yeah, sure. So very often they already know, like, there's something that's not working, or, I'm not happy. I don't know why, but there's something there that I should discover, right? So when they come to me, people come to me for like different reasons. Sometimes there's a very specific area or specific problem that they want to work on, or sometimes they're just simply stuck, lost, lonely. They don't know what to do next, right? So we work on identifying their current situation, so where they are and where they want to be, right? So there's a gap between where they are and where they want to be. So my role is to help them identify their presence and help them create, like a step-by-step plan or how to get there, right? So very often is, they have to understand, okay, why I am where I am. And very often we have to work on their limiting beliefs, right? So, a belief is just a thought that you repeat to yourself over and over and over again until you believed it, right? So we have beliefs that limit us and block us from moving forward. So, we work on those limiting beliefs, we identify them, we find the root cause of that issue, and then we try to create new, more empowering beliefs. So that's called working on your self-concept, right? So like how you see yourself.
So are you using the process of NLP, or how do you help them to get back to the original limiting belief that occurred? And how do you help them to reframe that so that they understand that what that belief was not really true for them, and it was only perception?
100%. I think, in life coaching, we believe that all of the answers, you already have them within you, right? So I am not the one who's telling you like what to do. I'm not the one who's giving you answers. I'm just helping you find your own answers.
Yes.
So, we do it through like deep, often self-provoking questions. We just like dig deeper into, very often in your past or like some traumas from your childhood, their own story, and very often we find out that their limiting beliefs are not even their beliefs. This is just someone else's thoughts that were projected onto them, right? Until they believed it. So if someone, for example, was told in their childhood that they're not smart enough or they're too talkative, that can stay with you for a very, very long time. And that can still block you when you're an adult, right? And you just like live with that limiting belief and you don't even realize that maybe it's blocking you from finding your dream job, right? Or maybe you are stuck in that corporate job that you don't like, but you would like to start a business, but you don't believe in yourself and you believe that you are not smart enough. And this is what you need to work on, and this is what you need to heal first in order to move past that.
And it's interesting when we start talking about those neural pathways, neuroscience, and how literally those neural pathways in our brain are developed to the point where they're habitual. And so those limiting beliefs become reality for us, whether they're conscious or subconscious. It still happens. I've started to play golf again. And it's really interesting because over the last little while, and I actually went and worked with a coach the other day, and every time I'm making that swing, I raise my left shoulder, which you're not supposed to do. And so consciously he says, okay, do the swing and don't raise your shoulder. And I try, and that shoulder goes up. And I'm thinking to myself, why on earth does that happen when I'm consciously trying not to do that? And then as I started thinking about it and researching it, going back to, okay, well, number one, I used to play a lot of tennis, which because I'm right-handed, I'm always leaning down to hit the ball and lifting my left shoulder. But even more significantly, because I'm a retired dentist, I was sitting doing dentistry using my right hand, which meant my left shoulder was always up when I was working on patients. And I realized I've developed a neural pathway that automatically raises that left shoulder for many things, including when I'm trying to play golf. And so now it's a matter of exercising and doing things to the point where I can break that neural pathway and develop a whole new one. And isn't that kind of the same thing that you're doing with people, is to help them to break those neural pathways that have been developed since childhood and help them to develop new ones?
Yes, 100%. I love that example. And, I just wanted to add that your mind loves what's familiar, right? So for you, it was like, shifting that shoulder up, right? Because that's what you did like over and over and over again. So like,
Right.
like your body remembered, right? So it's like the same with our thoughts and like how our mind works. Our mind loves what's familiar. So very often when we start working with those new beliefs, that are like better, more positive, right? Very often our mind will try to take us back to our old belief system because this is what our mind knows, right? So it's all about like repetition and just constantly working on yourself. Because, a lot of people think that, when they decide to do therapy or like life coaching sessions or like whatever it is, that they can, just come for like a month or 3 months and then they're like a completely new person. And I always say that, it's like that work is like never ending work. You have to keep doing that. It's like a commitment. Just because you work on your old limiting beliefs, it doesn't mean that like new are not created. Like we always have some limiting beliefs. We always like limit ourselves in some way. And, I don't see this as like any specific destination, this is more about the journey of like becoming better and better all the time. Right?
Yes, yes. And, the other thing I find interesting is when we talk about values and how so often people are not really aligned with their values.
Yeah.
And that creates a great deal of unhappiness, frustration. But here's my question for you, because how do you help them, number one, find their values and really find their true values? And number two, make sure that those values are not values that someone else has imprinted upon them, but rather it's really their genuine, true values of who they are and what is important to them?
Yes. So I would say like 3 things here. As we talked before, we have, we live that life that we were taught by our society. And I think we are bombarded with so much information and it's really hard to like hear our own voice. So first step, I would say, quiet your mind and listen to your intuition. Because that inner voice often knows the answers already. You have to trust it and you have to learn how to listen to it. And, to get clear on your values, just reflect on what truly matters to you. You have to ask yourself questions such as, what do I stand for? What do I believe in? What kind of life do I truly want for myself? Like, what is important to me? And just be very, very honest with yourself. Like quiet that mind, like, quiet that outside voice and just turn into yourself and just start asking yourself those questions. And then also practice self-awareness. Spend some quality time with yourself, spend some quality time with your emotions and look at your triggers and your patterns. Maybe you have some negative patterns that are blocking you. Journaling and meditation, I think those are very great tools to go back to that alignment with yourself. in terms of my own clients, I love giving homework for my clients because I believe that, coming to a session once per week is great, but it's not going to change your life. You need to do that work. So I love giving some like journaling prompts for my clients, depending on their specific situations. So usually those are just some questions for them to reflect and to get to know themselves better and deeper, and like dig deeper into, their own situation, into where they are at right now. And I would also say question everything. I think we don't question enough. Going back to those limiting beliefs, your mind wants what's familiar for you, and very often it wants to keep you small because that's safer. And instead of agreeing with that voice, question it. Is that true? Is that really what I believe? Or is that what someone else told me and I believed it, so it doesn't even belong to me?
Yes.
So, those key points, I would say, would like really help you to go back into that alignment with yourself.
So here's my question. And again, I think you hit on a key point, is you really do, you went and you worked with a therapist. You're now coaching people, and oftentimes that's actually sometimes more effective, depending on what type of therapy they go into. But here's the question: when you're listening to people talk, and as you're listening to them, and as you say, they're the ones that have to figure it all out, but you're the one that guides them in that direction. So how do you tell someone, if you're getting into values and identifying what their values are and so forth, how are you able to determine that as you're listening to them, the values that they're expressing to you are really not theirs, but there's the values of the religion, of the family, of the external aspects, and not really theirs? And if that's the case, then how do you help them to dig deeper and deeper until they find and identify what their true, genuine values are?
Sure. That's a good question. I think, what comes to my mind is I always ask my clients why they want it. Like, what is it going to bring to your life? What is it going to add to your life? Like, why do you want it? And what's going to happen if you don't have it, right? And if they can answer those questions from the heart, and you can really tell if someone is like talking with passion, that's their real core values. But if someone doesn't even know why they want it, and it's very like surface level, probably it's not their own values. This is something that was projected onto them, right? So in that situation, we are trying to dig deeper, and we are trying to find that why. So what drives them? What makes them excited? What kind of life they really would love to live? So just like trying to find that deeper why, and that underlying reason why they're doing what they're doing and why it's so important to them, that's probably the right way to go.
Well, and as you work with your clients, do you find, and have you had clients that are in relationships and they get out of relationships and they get right back into similar relationships, different person, but similar relationships, emotionally abusive, physically abusive, whatever it happens to be? Why do they keep repeating those patterns in your mind? And why are they not able to change that, but rather just keep getting into the same situation time and time again?
Yeah. Yes, I do have, a lot of young women who come to me who are struggling with relationships. And yes, as you said, very often it's a pattern, it can be same situation, but like different partner every time, right? Or even same partner, and they like keep coming back, and they're leaving and then keep going back. there's always a deeper reason why, right? And in that situations, very often we have to go back to their past. So, a while ago, I had this client, a young woman, very beautiful woman. She was in the same pattern of emotionally abusive relationships, and she was trying to find the right partner for herself, but for some reason she was attracting men who didn't want to commit to her, men who didn't want anything serious with her, who would leave her and then come back. And that was happening for like quite a few years. She just couldn't find anyone who would treat her right the way that she deserved. So after like 2 or so sessions, it turned out that her dad left her mom when she was young, and she never had a good relationship with her. With her father. And when I just asked her that question: if you could close your eyes and ask yourself, if I found the right man that would want to commit to me, what do I fear that would happen? And, it took her quite a few minutes to like really like align with herself and like find the right answer. And then after a few minutes, she looked at me and she told me that, oh, I fear that if I found the right man for me, he would leave me anyway, and that would hurt even more.
Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that fear literally creates energy? And, as we get into meditation and the quantum field and so forth and talk about that, the fact that fear creates an energy, it's like a magnet. You end up attracting the very thing that you fear. And
100%.
And that's what's happening to all of us to one degree or another. And I find it fascinating how that can happen. And, how did you help? How did you help her? How did you help her to ultimately overcome that fear and realize that is not necessarily what's going to happen to her in a really positive relationship?
Yeah, first of all, just knowing that, that fear was coming from her relationship, between her parents, that's a great insight. And, that's the core that we are working with, that fear of abandonment and the fear that, oh, that would happen to me as well. And then, you just question it. So I asked her, like, is that true? Like, just because that happened to your mom, is that a fact that will happen to you? And obviously the answer is no. So just questioning that and working on those beliefs and just like building that strong relationship with herself, that means working on her self-esteem, right? Because her self-esteem was very low. She didn't believe that she could attract a man who would commit to her, a man who would stay with her. So working on that self-esteem and that she deserved better and that she deserved to be in a healthy, loving relationship, build that self-concept. That's the foundation, right? Of like, because I do believe that your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every relationship that you have in your life. So if you want to attract that loving, beautiful, romantic relationship, you need to work on yourself first. And, very often it also means going back to your past and dealing with, relationship between your parents or, whatever happened to you in your childhood. But you have to work on yourself and the relationship you have with yourself. If you
well, that's so true. And so have you read anything of Eckhart Tolle's talking about the ego and so forth?
Sorry, who?
Eckhart Tolle.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that a little bit because, one of the interesting things that I find is that people tend to compare themselves to others. They tend to want something, not realizing that it is just ego driven, which is really a false reality in many respects. And oftentimes, even on social media, if they're particularly following social media, they will see things and start to compare themselves to those individuals who seem to be so totally happy and, so great. What have you found is the effect, for instance, on social media and how that can affect individuals as far as their own self-worth and that type of thing?
Yeah, so I 100% agree. I think that, one of the biggest challenges that young women face today is constantly comparing themselves to others, and especially through social media. I think it's so easy to get caught up in the highlights of other people's lives and feel like you are not enough. Especially on Instagram and TikTok, we see those like beautiful lives, constantly traveling, not really working, but like making lots of money. And we believe that's true. And we believe that this is what we want. So, we keep comparing ourselves, and that creates that huge limiting belief that I am not good enough. And I think that belief that I am not good enough is probably one of the most deeply rooted and common limiting beliefs that many of us carry. And, that also leads to loneliness, right? I think, recent study shows that over 27% of young people aged 19 to 29 experience significant levels of loneliness, and that number only goes up. And I think social media is a big reason why we compare ourselves to others. And I would definitely suggest maybe going through the accounts that you follow and just see if how did that make me feel, and maybe unfollow some people who bring you down, people who don't allow with your values. And just be very real with yourself. What does that bring into my life? If it doesn't bring anything positive, just, unfollow. And, I think also social media affects our self-esteem in a significant level, so how you see yourself and the value that you bring into that world. And I think it's important because that relationship that you have real self-affect, every area of your life, as we discussed. And, when you have that high self-esteem, and you truly appreciate and accept who you are, that then creates a ripple effect. And, the outside reality reflects that back to you. So you make healthier choices, you set better boundaries, and so on. And when you have low self-esteem, it can feel like nothing you do is good enough. And you may struggle to trust your own decisions, and you seek that external validation a lot through social media, for example. And you settle for less than what you deserve. So what I want to say is that ultimately your life becomes a reflection of how you value yourself. So when you don't have clear values for yourself, you might follow for that social media trick and follow someone else's dreams and not to think for yourself.
Well, and it's interesting, and I'm sure you've experienced this particularly, where you're coaching people and you're really getting to know what they're going through, and the difficulties that they have and so forth. I look at social media and, for instance, on Facebook, and here's this couple that's so totally happy and life is great and it's just so amazing. And yet I know, because I'm the one that gets the phone calls, and it's like they're suffering, they're having such difficulties, life is not good. And it's interesting that people tend to post, in most cases, well, two things. Either someone is posting constantly that they're a victim and a victim, and that gets to be bad news. But the other one is that they're happy and everything's great and life is great. And they're showing these wonderful pictures, which most of the time have been modified by some really cool app on the phone. And all of a sudden you're looking at them and going, why is my life not like theirs? When in reality, you may have a better life than they have. And yet you don't realize it because this is social media and they're not going to really talk about those difficulties for the most part that they're experiencing. And so I find, again, that comparison of us against someone else, or the ego starts to kick in and says, you know what, you deserve to have a better car. You deserve to have a bigger house. You deserve to have a better, partner, whatever that happens to be. When in reality, how do you help people to get rid of that and kind of put everything to the side and then see the true reality, the true perception, and allow them to help themselves to become happier, to actually achieve what they want to achieve, which is in total alignment with their values?
That's a good question. I'm happy that you asked that. I think, when it comes to comparing yourself to others, we need to understand that we all think, understand, and behave from our own level of perception. So that means that other people also only understand from their own level of perception. So it's like we all live in our own little worlds where, the same thing can mean something completely different to me than it means to you, right? So when you fully understand this, you realize that nothing is personal. And comparing yourself to others or seeking that external validation is really not sustainable, because someone else's perception of you is just the projection of their own beliefs and their own experiences. So we act from what we know and from what we've experienced, right? So seeking that external validation doesn't really make sense, because we are all very different and we all ultimately want, not all of us want the same thing, right? So just knowing that, whatever someone else is thinking about you or whatever someone else told you is really, it has nothing to do with you. It's just their own perception based on what they've known and what they've experienced. So just understanding that, I think just changes everything. It just changes your perception, right?
Right. And, you talked about loneliness and how there's a huge percentage of young people now that are feeling lonely. It's really fascinating to me. I was talking to someone else last week on the podcast, and he had a theological background. And so we got into that a little bit. And one of the things that we talked about was this concept of, love God and then love thy neighbor as thyself. Okay. And it's always, love thy neighbor as thyself and so forth. But the reality, as we talked about it, was what really might be being said is you will only love your neighbor as well as you love yourself.
Yes.
And all of a sudden it changes the whole thing, because, our behavior is a reflection of who we are. And so if we're lonely, if we don't really truly have a sense of love for ourselves, then we're never really going to experience those connections. And then we're going to experience that loneliness. So here's one of my latter questions for you. How do you help people to learn to really love themselves, to accept who they are, to recognize the goodness that they are, and to truly develop that love for themselves. Because I really believe if they can do that, they're going to start developing those connections they're so desperately seeking.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I loved what you said, and I just wanted to add that, I just saw this quote somewhere that said that, we can only ever attract the kind of love that we've created within ourselves, right? So
Yes.
it's that inside out process. And your question about how to make people love themselves, I think this is our natural state. Your natural state, is that pure love, and that love for life, and love for creation, and that love to create the life that feels good to you, not to anyone else. So just reminding them that they didn't come here to please someone else, or to live their life based on someone else's beliefs, on someone else's rules. They came here to create a life that feels good to them, right? So just focusing on themselves, taking the attention off the external world and putting it back on themselves. And you have to ask yourself, how do I want to feel? Do I want to feel bad? And do I want to feel that, that I'm constantly not good enough and compare myself to others? And, or do I want to, feel good about myself? Do I want to feel loved and appreciated? And do I want to grow, and move forward with my life and change and experience, good and bad, but, and so I think, it always comes back to, that relationship with yourself, and how do you want to live? How do you want to feel on a daily basis?
Oh, that's beautiful. And so as we close the podcast, what would be a message that you would really like to share with the audience that could uplift them?
Sure. It's really hard to choose, just one, but I would say that if you are currently unhappy, or if you don't live the life that you truly feel it's yours, I would say just block the outside noise and listen to your intuition, and start asking yourself, what do I want for myself? What kind of life do I want to live? And just, start questioning everything. Start questioning your limiting beliefs, or what you think of yourself. And, start asking yourself, is that really mine? Or did I just believe that because someone else has told me to?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great message. So let me ask you a question. How do people find you if they really want to get some help?
So I have a website. It's patrycyacoach.com, and I have Instagram. It's also at patrycyacoach.
Okay, and spell your .com one. Spell your website.
PATYSISA coach, COACH.
Okay, pattyisacoach.com.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Patty, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been great. Wonderful conversation. And obviously, you have some great skills that you're able to help your clients.
Oh, thank you so much for your kind words. And thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate it. And folks, I appreciate you listening. Hope you've enjoyed this. And obviously, if you got some questions, get a hold of Patty and start asking some questions. Meanwhile, hopefully you'll join us again soon. This is Dr. Doug saying namaste.